Some of my most popular videos are from my How a Man Shall Be Armed series, where I show my reenactor friends getting kitted up in clothing and armour from various periods in history. I created this series because I always wanted to see perfect examples of truly authentic arms and armour to help inspire people to learn about real history, and avoid movie tropes and reenactorisms. Or simply to help prevent people stumble at the hurdle of believing stereotypes about armour that has since been proven wrong through new research. Now, I do not claim to be an expert on medieval arms and armour, far from it. I am simply an enthusiast who has a deep passion for the hobby of reenactment. So, while I certainly create these videos with the purest of intentions, some of the information I discuss in my videos may sometimes be incorrect, out of context, or maybe fall into reenactorism tropes without realising it. As such, the purpose of this video is to go through all my How a Man Shall Be Armed episodes thus far, and highlight all the mistakes or misrepresentations I have made in the past. Effectively, I am now going to beat myself up for about 25 minutes. We start with my most popular video, How an Early 15th Century French Knight Shall Be Armed. There are a few errors here. Firstly, while discussing male skirts and male shorts to protect the groin area, I mentioned that they are both later 15th century items. However, this is a slip of the tongue on my part, as I meant to say that medieval shorts are later 15th century items according to the artwork that we have, and male skirts were very much in use throughout the early 15th century right through to the 1500s. I do also have a point about the spaulders being quite widely spaced out from the cuirass, showing a lot of vulnerable space where only the male is protecting the knight. Authentic armour is very expensive, and it is also a lengthy process since all the components need to be handmade and measured out meticulously. Sure, the spaulders here may be a bit small, but from my knowledge, the arm harness is based off a real effigy depicting a knight in full armour. So many of the measurements of the spaulders in relation to the arm harness will be taken from the effigy. Since the reenactor may have a different body shape to the knight depicted in the effigy, the size of these spaulders may have needed to be made bigger to suit the reenactor instead of the knight. But by doing this, the arm harness would no longer look like a reproduction of the effigy that it's inspired from, so the armourer and the reenactor is at a crossroads. Do you recreate the armour to look as close to the original object as possible? Or do you expand certain pieces to effectively cover the reenactor's body, the person who's paying for it, and therefore sacrifice a little accuracy from the original? This is just one of the many headaches that both reenactors and armourers have to bear with when recreating medieval arms and armour. So, now you know why there is a gap between the cuirass and the spaulders, as a few of you rightly pointed out in the comments. In the How a Burgundian Archer Shall Be Armed, there is a prominent issue that I wanted to point out just to avoid any confusion. As beautiful as the arming jacket is, it is actually a fantasy item. While heraldry is known to have featured on civilian clothing, it is rarely depicted on military clothing. The jacket also has gaps for the armpits. This is also fantasy, and is a reenactment trope which usually stems from the makers not spending time on making clothes with period-correct gussets, which allow for unimpeded movement of the arms. By making a hole around the armpit, you can make the jacket fit the wearer without the need of excessive tailoring. My friend in the video has spent a lot of money on his reenactment kit, and we both really wanted to show off his harness due to the beautiful alternative looks and style, and so I made the choice to include this arming jacket in the video. As much as I'd love to, I cannot provide you 100% perfect historical reproductions. If I did, I'd only be able to create one video every 6 months or so due to how hard it is to find people with absolute perfect recreations of historical armour, including all the soft kit and trimmings that go with it. Instead, my videos serve as an honest attempt at providing my audience with acceptable recreations, as opposed to a mix of poor quality items thrown together that may loosely represent a particular historical period, but fail completely when placed under scrutiny. Thanks to this video, you would have been given a brief education on the history of English mercenaries fighting under the banner of Burgundy, along with some examples of alternative armour and decoration that was popular with Burgundian soldiers at the time. Some of you also pointed out the drawing methods that the reenactor was using when shooting the longbow. We filmed this video in the cemetery of Crowfield Church in Suffolk, so we had to be very careful where we were shooting the arrows. As such, we picked a tree stump which was about 20 foot away and aimed at this, keeping the arrows under control to negate the risk of injury to other churchgoers, as well as the risk of damage to the graves. The reenactor in question is a highly skilled archer who can certainly draw his longbow correctly if required. This is also a reenactment-safe longbow used for public events, so the draw weight is capped to around 30 pounds. Hence, it is much lighter and easier to pull back than a real longbow would be. In the How a Mounted 13th Century Knight Shall Be Armed video, the knight is wearing a beautiful crested great helm, but with no sevelier or skullcap underneath. While skullcaps aren't 100% necessary, they were commonly worn under great helms as a lighter configuration of armour which knights could choose to resort to if they didn't want to wear their great helm anymore. I will pull back the curtain of these videos for you a little bit, and notify you that the sevelier that the reenactor owned during the making of this video didn't fit him well enough, so we chose not to include it in the video. Other than that, Julian, the reenactor featured in this episode, wanted to mention that the tunic was brand new at the time of filming, and was made a bit too long by his tailor, a mistake that he plans on fixing at a later date. In the How a 5th Century Limitani Shall Be Armed episode, I make the mistake of saying that the lorica segmentata, or plate armour, replaces the lorica hamata, the mail shirt, when actually these coexisted together for the majority of the Roman period. I also overstated the military breakdown of Britain after the fall of the Roman Empire. There was still a military force in place and it was still highly organised, with fighting manuals and regular training continuing to be followed. I think I made Romano Britain sound a little bit too much like a Mad Max-style wilderness, with small-scale skirmishes happening all over the country, when in reality, large-scale battles with proper military formations and organisation were still occurring during this period in time. I also stated that Romano-British soldiers were typically less armoured than in previous periods of the Roman Empire, yet this is also not necessarily true. And I forgot to give the undertunic its correct name, which should be subarmalis. And as well as this, the tassels that I mentioned are actually named terrages. I also spelled limitane wrong as well. It should have an EI on the end, and not just I. Lastly, I also called the Sutton Hoo helmet a Spangenhelm construction, which is also incorrect. In my How a Viking Jarl Shall Be Armed video, the kit doesn't actually reflect a proper Jarl's status. There are multiple reenactorisms in this video, such as the use of a simple belt, when a Jarl's belt should be highly decorated. Indeed, the main issue with this video is the lack of decoration and finery to reflect the soldier's status. The cloak should have a fancier weave, with some nice pattern work around the edges. He should be adorned in much more jewellery, armbands and rings with brass pins and brooches rather than iron ones that you see. You even have to consider the colour of the clothing, since very dark colours like this blue tunic would be very hard to achieve in a real 10th century context. The sword is also 200 years out of date, with the three-lobed pommel being an 8th century style. By this time he should have had a more modern D-shaped pommel which reflects the dating of finds we have in Britain for this period. And since he is of Jarl status, he could certainly afford the later styles. Lastly, the belt bag is also a reenactorism. There is no evidence to suggest that warriors like this were carrying belt bags into battle during this time. If anything, cloth bags would have been used and the warrior would also be carrying a manicure kit with them. A small pouch or box containing tweezers, toothpicks, combs, ear spoons, and various other small preening items that would have been carried on a Viking's person. Vikings were well known for their self-care and attention to how they looked, so this would have been a nice addition to the video. Again, pronunciation is also key. Multiple times I have pronounced things wrong, and that's mainly due to a lack of research. I have since been advised that the leg wraps featured in the video are called vanagas, and not weringas as I had been saying throughout multiple episodes. How a late 14th century knight shall be armed. The armour featured in this video is a work in progress, and I mainly wanted to show it off to talk about the use of splint armour and leather components and the transition from mail to plate armour. The bassinet and breastplate is more of a 1380s style of armour, yet the arm harness is closer to the mid-1300s instead. As such, this harness is a bit of a mix of mid to late 1300s armour, with some components being out of fashion by the time that other components would be worn. I do plan on filming an updated version of this harness with the reenactor featured in the video, as he has developed this kit considerably over the last 12 months, and now has a few extra items to help enhance the authenticity and the overall accurate look. When discussing landsknechts, I incorrectly said that the cat's bolger translated to cat gutter. This is incorrect, and while bolg or bolger has a few different translations, it most likely refers to roughhousing, brawling, or fighting at close quarters. I also incorrectly stated that the Landsknecht originated from the Reichsläufer, but actually they simply took inspiration from them, they were not originated from them. They were also not soldiers of the Holy Roman Empire. They were mercenaries who came under the service of the Holy Roman Empire, as well as multiple other factions throughout mainland Europe. In the How a Roman Centurion Shall Be Armed video, I made the mistake of stating that centurions would command and not fight. Centurions certainly did take part in the fighting, and indeed were on the front lines. As such, they would have either used a scutum shield shown in the video, or a smaller round shield called a palmer. In my How a Mounted Norman Knight Shall Be Armed video, the reenactor is wearing a mail coif, which is not historically accurate to the 11th century. Upon reflection, this should have been removed from the filming process, but I really wanted to film this reenactor due to his talents in horsemanship, so I didn't mention anything. When discussing the sidearms in my 15th century crossbowman video, I don't explain myself well enough and incorrectly state that the crossbowman only had a dagger as a sidearm. I meant to say that while this reenactor only had a dagger, there were multiple common sidearms that crossbowmen of this period in history used, such as swords, messes, axes, and clubs. Finally, I am now going to address two big reenactorisms, and attempt to correct the confusion. We have no firm evidence for gambesons worn under mail armour during the 11th to 12th centuries. And we have a lot of evidence both written and in artwork of mail being worn over plain tunics instead. For the very rare description of padded undergarments, we haven't got enough solid evidence and description to say how they looked. They definitely weren't the clumsy and thick padded garments most reenactors wear today. In my recent How an Italo-Norman Knight Shall Be Armed video, the reenactor is wearing a gambeson. I attempt to explain this away by calling it an undertunic, but that does not do this mistake justice. Upon reflection, I shouldn't have included this item as part of the 11th century kit. At the start of the video, the reenactor is also wearing a Viking-style hood, which, despite the Normans originating as Vikings, there is no evidence of Normans wearing this Nordic style of clothing during this time. And lastly, the sax featured on the belt of the Norman soldier is a misnomer. While saxes were used by both Anglo-Saxons and the Vikings, there is no evidence of them being used by the Normans, and indeed there is no confirmed sax finds in France from this period in history. Sure, the Normans would have used knives similar to this, but there is also no artistic evidence of Normans wearing them on their belt during battle, or wielding them as a weapon. So, therefore, it was wrong to include these items in the armouring videos. Well, that is pretty much every mistake that I had made in my How a Man Shall Be Armed series, or at least the ones I have since caught and learned to correct. I am very sure that there are other mistakes and misrepresentations in my videos, but these were at least the main ones. I am also sure that I will continue to make mistakes in future videos, but I will continue to learn from them as I discover the beauty of historical arms and armour with you, my audience. Again, I will reiterate that I am no expert. I am simply an enthusiast with a passionate interest in military history, and I have always wanted to produce this series to help others get interested in the topic, and inspired to begin historical reenactment. I hope you've enjoyed this video of me flogging myself for 20 to 25 minutes, and just remember that life is all about learning, especially admitting when you are wrong, and learning from your mistakes to improve your knowledge and wisdom for the future. But for now, thanks for watching.